What's up, everybody? Welcome to the pre-call, and the thing I want to talk about this week is purpose. This week, while doing cardio, I've been watching The Last Dance and getting different pieces and parts from it and journaling quite a bit. Is it Last Dance? Yeah, it's the Michael Jordan one, 30 for 30, that is on Netflix. And some interesting takeaways for those of you who've watched it. Michael Jordan's a maniac. And like, Michael Jordan is a bit of an asshole, and what a high performer, right? And like, what we can see there, that guy is so driven and so motivated. But even it being the best, what we noticed happens, there's a few really interesting things, is after he wins his first championship, the drive's there, but then it becomes this like expected thing. So it even shifts for him, right? That the destination isn't it anymore. It's not enough to keep it alive. It was getting there, and then he got there, and now holding on to it isn't the same pursuit. It's a different type of happiness it brings. You know, the championship after championship weren't as good as the initial win, right? Like, there's so long that gets to that first one. So he kind of struggles. But what you hear throughout the course of this thing, right, is like Mike would have these conflicts and establish these little things to kind of drive himself. And there's one story in particular that I got where he's talking about this guy, Robert Patrick. Robert Patrick has a good game on him when he's come back from playing baseball. And the story is like Robert Patrick hangs like 39 points on Michael Jordan and plays for the Bullets, and after the game says, like, walks up to Mike and says something like, "Good game, Mike." And that just sets him on fire, because he didn't have a good game, and you fucking know he didn't have a good game. And what he takes that, right? It's like personal attack, which we can dive into a lot of motivations there with Mike, but and whether or not he's happy, sure. I don't know. But what I got from this was he has that thing and sets this fire in himself of like, I'll show you. Like, I'll show you what, if you're going to play against me and you're going to see what the best is, then I'm going to give you the full business. And he shows up the next night ready to rip and ends up hanging like 39 points on him by halftime. And then come to find out, like, after this, just beating he gives that guy and the Bullets that night, yeah, he made up the whole thing. Like, Mike had told teammates and told other people about this, hey, good game. And at the truth of it, Mike made it all up to give himself that fire. And I find that interesting, right? Because he's able to create that purpose enough to get his best out of himself at will. Because he's shown up enough and he knows like what it takes. And so I wonder if he's in his head trying to find motivation for the game and trying to find motivation to play. Is he working through stuff of like, man, is it this? Is it this? Until he finds that feeling of like, yeah, motherfucker. And then boom, he's got it and can harness it, right? Like, that flame is now something he can tend and nurture that fire and purpose by creating this story around it. And if he can, at the end of playing, laugh about it and realize he created the story and he wasn't personally attacked and he's not really fucking mad at Robert, beautiful. What an incredible way to figure out how your machine works and what works for you to drive yourself forward. I think that gives such a great opportunity to look at how we can create purpose in our own life for day-to-day missions, for day-to-day intensity and day-to-day accountability. It's finding those little things, right? Like, how do I move the needle today, which continues to move the needle long-term? To get to those long-term goals, there's going to be occasional little fires you've got to set. So like, when I was competing, to test that, as the season got to more like my championship season, where I know that I need to be throwing my best and that like repetition and training is getting lower, but intensity is going up. And so the way that works with throwing, it's not like I'm going out there to just throw as hard as I can for a bunch of throws. I would start strategizing things like on Thursdays, which would be my last day of training before travel. So we usually travel Friday and then Saturday compete. So my last training session on Thursday, or if it needed to be Wednesday or whatever it was, I would only give myself like 5 throws per event. I would do my warm-up, and I would get 5 throws from touching the implement, period. You know, I can warm up, but I can't like warm up and throw. Because typically when I'm competing, right, like you can move around and warm your body up, but you don't get a lot of warm-up throws because you're in a field of people and you just don't have enough time. Like the rotation's got to happen, right? You have too many people around. And so if it takes me like 30 throws to get to my best, I can't do that on game day. So I trained myself to be able to hit it in 5. And I knew confidently that no matter what the scenario was, that I could show up tired after a day of work or day of travel for whatever my Thursday was in the rain, that I can hit a big throw in 5 throws and walk away from it. And that gave me a lot of confidence. And so week to week, I would find these little purpose of like, Thursday, I got to be able to hit this. I need to be able to hit it in this many throws. And I would find this little game to play with myself to sharpen the blade, to sharpen that edge, to give myself just a little bit more. Because I need all of it, right? Like I need to know that I can flip the switch and fully focus. And I was able to do that. Like that's where the always party came in. That's where the always party mentality came in behind Hate Brand and everything else, is for me competing and me focusing before I take an attempt. I'm a pretty calm competitor until go time. But go time is an on and off switch. So like 30 to 40 seconds before my throw, I can switch it completely on and get the adrenaline and get fired up and be focused to do my thing. And at that point, like any anxiety or butterflies or thoughts go away because we've done the work, because the job's done. And when that's done, like you've got the confidence, right? So now it's just time to party. It's time to use all that extra energy and extra anxiety and extra adrenaline and the rest that you got and the focus that comes from competing. Like now's the time to party and like see what your best comes out, right? But giving yourself that little added boost, and then also in your training and through your life, like giving yourself chances to show up. Like today's a day that we need to show up at our best. And that becomes a skill that you can sharpen like anything else. And that's one of those things Jordan did, right? Like I would say, do I think he's the most athletic guy I've ever and greatest basketball player of all time is really tough, just because I personally think times change, right? He was the most dominant player in his era by far, and I think probably the most dominant player of their own era than anyone. I also would say he's as savage of a competitor as if we've ever seen. Like not just the ability to play the game as good as he did and have the physical gifts and work as hard as he did. He had the headspace to be able to put it together when it really mattered, and he led his team. Like he held a high fucking standard, but there wasn't any time where he was that he wasn't asking anyone to do something that he couldn't do or wasn't willing to do or put in the effort for. Man, that documentary shows it. Like it's not easy for anyone. Everyone's got to go after it. You know, Michael Jordan's willing to die for those dreams that he had. And so be able to put that effort into you. Be able to trust yourself that way. Like there's a ton of confidence that comes from that, from being able to create this little purpose and test yourself. And find that edge and find how you show up at your best. Right? Like that's what building a big morning routine did for me. That's what building a warm-up did for me, is it eliminated, I had 5 or 6 practices a week plus all these competitions to build up so many reps at getting good at competing and getting good at showing up when it matters and dealing with the anxiety and dealing with the stress and realizing that I will still perform at my best because I'm in control. And while that's great for competing, like I want to be able to take that into my job. I want to be able to take that into my relationship. Like I want to know how to be at my best when I want it. That I want to be in control of that and be intentional of trying to be my best in every situation I can. It doesn't cost me any more energy to try to be my best, but the outcome and return on investment in my life is tenfold. So make sure you're focusing that energy and intention toward a purpose that helps you. and not one that harms you, because you can create a story the same way Michael does, but let it destroy you. And we often do that. It's so often the stories and anxieties we build around what could happen are so much worse than the reality we've ever lived in. I mean, that quote of, we suffer far more by our own thought than we ever have an experience, and that's true. But you can manage that. You can also enjoy your own thought and set yourself up and be on your own side and live in that abundance that we speak so often about. You know, that's being able to see the benefit and see the challenges and see these opportunities that you have to sharpen your edge and find out who you are, because you find out who you are in discomfort. It's easy to be nice when things are going great. It's easy to be great when things are, it's easy to be focused when things are great and there isn't any stress and things are ideal, but they're rarely ever ideal. You need to know that it doesn't matter, that I can perform well and be nice to people when I'm hungry, when I'm tired. I can choose the way I perform. And you do that by trying it often and trying the repetition and realizing that how I feel in the moment does not get control of my actions. I act at my best. I always do my best. It's one of the big rules. And if not, we can't pretend that the results are ours. We can only act at our best with intention for as long as it takes to accomplish the goal. All right. Thank you guys. I'm enjoying doing these short calls and in loving the group and loving the accountability. You guys are fucking ripping. The progress that we're seeing people make, these changes in mindset, these shifts, and people are being able to start making some real fucking progress in their life. And that's what we want. We want to be focused on turning our lives into exactly what we want them to be, and less focused back on what was or what's supposed to be, or any bitterness toward what was, and just thank yourself for getting here. And thank yourself for the work you're going to do to get where you're going to be going. Thank yourself for that great life that you're going to be living when you change all these attributes of yourself and you build these different habits and you learn these new skills. But we can't skip that step. We've got to do the work, and that's what we're doing now. By showing up every week and being accountable and taking note and saying, here's what I did this week to get better. And if I'm doing all the things I can to get better, that's all I can ever ask of myself. So thank you guys, and we'll talk to you next week.